Hey, everybody, how's it going? Welcome in a gloomy Monday here in the Mile High City, but it is draft week. We've got a bunch to get into. We're going to be joined by Tyler Yaremchuk from Daily Faceoff and Oilers Nation. I'm Jesse Montano. Meghan Angley will be with me in just a moment. Like I said, got a great show for you guys, but of course, want to start today by reminding you guys about our great friends over at Trusted American Mortgage. Head on over to trustedamerican.com. Right now, they want to help you lower your interest rate, get a better monthly payment. And hey, if you go right now to trustedamerican.com/sports, see if they can maybe even help you defer that refinance payment on your mortgage for a couple months. Trustedamerican.com. See how much money they can help you start saving today. Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome in. Welcome to the show, Guerrilla Sports Off Ice. I'm Jesse Montano. That's Meghan Angley. Meghan, it was blistering hot all weekend. Sun was out, blue skies, a little bit of a change up today. Are you like me? Does this just affect you from the moment you get out of bed to have the gloomy overcast?
You know, I didn't check the weather, so that's why I'm dressed in such bright colors. And I walked outside and felt like I did not match the weather for today. And I'm embracing it, but it does affect me for sure. I was hoping to be met with sunshine while looking like sunshine, and I just have to cope.
I did this I'm wearing colors appropriate for the weather, but like I stepped outside the door and I was like, oh, do I need sleeves? No, I'll be fine. By the time I got to the office, it's always a little bit chillier in here.
Yeah.
I was like, mistake.
Mistake.
Meghan, the Stanley Cup has been awarded. We are officially, it's draft week, Friday, Saturday. We're going to talk a lot about the draft in the lead up this week. We were just saying right before, it kind of snuck up on us. Just given the fact it's decentralized, all the teams are going to be in their own buildings. I don't know. Just before we get into all of it, we're going to talk about it later at the end of the show. Just real quick, are you feeling prepared for the draft?
No, because I don't know how to prepare when they only have so few picks, so late rounds.
Yep.
What am I supposed to be doing, right? Like, you've got the draft guide, Elite Prospects comes out with one. There's no predicting who's going to be available. What is it, 4th and a 7th round pick? So, and should I even be preparing in that sense? Right. Are they going to make a trade and just acquire more draft capital, or will this point to a roster move? So anyways, I don't feel prepared because this actually feels more uncertain than past draft years where they've got, a couple picks at least within the first round or thereabouts, and you can kind of guess the top 100 players then and just start sorting through there. But I don't even have that.
I'm with you. And like you said, the Avs holding 2 single picks across the 7 rounds, I do think has added to that a bit for me. But yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about the draft, the implications for the Avs, where they may be able to bring some of those picks back into the fold. We'll get into that today. Tomorrow, we'll have a couple special draft episodes of Guerrilla Sports Off Ice this week. Do you care if I go ahead and break the news to everyone? No pucks and Prosecco this week. It is a draft focus week. So we've got some great content coming your guys' way. But Meghan, we talked Florida Panthers at the end of last week. We teased that we're going to maybe be getting into Edmonton Oilers this week and where they go. And in just a few minutes, we're going to have Tyler Yaremchuk, Daily Faceoff and Oilers Nation joining us to get some great insight from him. Always love chatting with him. But just for you, broad strokes, I talked about it last week that it felt like, unfortunately, they came up a little bit shorter this year than it felt like from the year before, where they lose in 7 games. I guess just your kind of broad strokes thoughts on the Oilers before Tyler joins us.
Yeah, I think it was McDavid, but one of the players had kind of the exit interview type comments around how last year it was heartbreaking and this year they're just angry. They are just angry with the way this exit happened because last year, it was scratch and clawing their way to Force 7, and this year they kind of got punched in the mouth on the way out and didn't really have an answer for it. So I understand the anger, because I'm sitting here wondering what is next for the future of the Edmonton Oilers. They have a lot of questions to address with players at the top of the lineup like McDavid, but honestly, they just need a philosophy conversation around, all right, they load up on the forward depth that didn't really help them, especially from a scoring perspective in these games towards the end of the Cup final. And they still have huge issues to address on the back end and goaltending. So I think a total overhaul of the philosophy around the Edmonton Oilers is needed in order for this team to really stand a chance. And that feels weird saying, because they just went to the Cup final back-to-back years. On paper, that sounds like it's a great thing. But what you're seeing is the roster construction is quite literally what is causing them to fall short. So a serious reevaluation is needed here.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's so interesting to talk about. And, really, we were even having that discussion going back to the first round with the Avs and the Stars of like, one of these teams has to lose, and it feels a little bit crazy to be talking about like, do major changes need to come for one of these teams that has to lose, in that first round series. And then to your point just now, we're talking about a team that has run to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row. But they're just, and that's part of the reason why I'm excited to get Tyler's perspective on it. There was just something about it this year that it just didn't feel, I don't know if it was as threatening or just maybe the other part that might be a little bit unfair and all this, maybe the Florida Panthers are just that good. And we're not giving enough credit to the fact that the Florida Panthers might just be that good. But with that, let's go ahead and go to our guest for today. All right, and we welcome in Tyler Yaremchuk, Daily Faceoff, Oilers Nation. Tyler, I'm super excited you're able to make some time. I've been on your show a few times. Happy to be able to return the favor here. Thanks for making a few minutes here.
Yeah, no problem. And the production side of me, what a sweet transition that was too. That was dope.
Hey, thanks. It's new, so I'm glad you liked it. Tyler, you just heard us a little bit, I'm sure, talking about the Oilers and just where things stand. I'm going to start with the lowest hanging fruit, because this is the number one thing on my mind. We hear the interviews from Connor McDavid, both on the night that they lose Game 6 and the exit interviews. I'm just going to start here, and I'm sure Megan's going to dig in with much better, more rich questions. But where are you at with Connor McDavid and what's ahead for this summer?
Yeah, I think it's so funny that people are making such a big deal out of those comments. And I'm seeing a lot of like, oh man, that has to have Oilers fans feeling worried about this summer. And it's a lot of people just like projecting these insecurities onto, Edmontonians and Oilers fans, that Connor McDavid has just always been chomping at the bit to get out of here and he can't wait to go somewhere else. And it's like, Connor McDavid, the first opportunity he had coming out of his entry-level contract, signed an 8-year deal with this team at a point when things didn't look all that great. They had just missed the playoffs. Like, it wasn't like there was this big, beaming, bright future, except for the fact that they just had Connor McDavid. So, again, his comments the other day, could he have maybe came out and been like, I love being in Edmonton, and said something along those lines? Sure, he could have been a little bit more direct than that. But he talked about how he wants to be on a winning team. Well, the Oilers are a combined 3 wins away from a Stanley Cup the last 2 seasons. Like,
totally,
they're just as close to winning as anyone not named the Florida Panthers. And number 2, he talked about doing what's best for him and his family. Being here in Edmonton, him and his wife have bought millions of dollars of real estate downstairs for his wife, Lauren Kyle McDavid, to open up her now 3rd business that's owned and operated out of the city. His best friend signed last year. His longtime agent runs the team. His coach from junior is the head coach. Like, all of these things connect at some point. I think it's a lot of, and like, Oilers fans aren't running around in the street right now being like, oh, Connor McDavid might leave. Everyone seems to think that there's some panic and some insecurity from Edmonton. There's not. I've never been worried for a second that he's leaving. Like, he's signing a likely 8-year ticket, probably in August.
No, your point of the wanting to be on a winning team. Well, hey, you're on the winningest Western Conference team for the last 2 years. So there's a good start.
I know some of the conversation too has shifted to big game players score in big game moments, and the way in which Edmonton Stars were contained in this Cup final, kind of a point of emphasis in an elimination game. The lone goal scorer is Vasily Podkolzin. What do you make of this, and how is that something that gets addressed if it's needed?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One, to almost tie that into the McDavid thing. It's not like Connor McDavid in Game 7 last year, this past season, had 5 points in the games the Oilers were eliminated and their goaltending was atrocious. Like, he's been held in check in pretty much all of the 13 Stanley Cup final games they've played. He had the 2 really big performances last year, and that's kind of it. So they need more from guys not named Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, so that when there are stretches where the big guns are held in check by Barkovs and Reinharts and these elite defensive players on the other side, that someone else can do the scoring. And there always seems to be this conversation with the Oilers that they're so top heavy and they can't be this top heavy. Their depth needs to be better. But I don't think that's the case at all. I think they're missing more true difference makers up front. Like, you look at Florida, how many players do they have in that forward group that make more than $6 million a year? You got Barkov, Tkachuk, Reinhart, Verhaeghe, count Marchand in that, and then go ahead and count Sam Bennett in that as well. 6 players that make north of $6 million on their deals or will be by next season. The Edmonton Oilers have 2 forwards who make more than $6 million, and it's Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And that's really what defined this series, is that the top 2 lines for each team could saw each other off. And when it got to the third line, Florida had Brad Marchand and Edmonton had Connor Brown with a broken foot. Like, that's the coughing baby versus hydrogen bomb meme that you see go around all the time. Like, there's no contest there. The Oilers need to find a way. They have no assets. They have no cap space. They don't got a whole lot of anything, but they somehow need to find more difference makers to add to this forward group.
Well, and in terms of different difference makers, having Zach Hyman in that final, that maybe would have helped a little bit as well. But no, I like that call out, the finding some of those difference makers up front. We've talked a lot about just during the Cup final and after, Evan Bouchard and Matthias Ekholm. I think they have given the Oilers such quality minutes at different times, and I think Matthias Ekholm was a really nice add to complement next to Evan Bouchard. But we were talking at the end of that series there, it did feel like Evan Bouchard got a little bit exposed on the defensive side of things. I guess where are you at with him? Is he one of those players? Like, I felt this way with Tyson Barrie when he was still with the Avs. Like, you live with the lumps because of what Evan Bouchard brings. I guess where are you at with him and what that next contract might look like?
Yeah, my line on him is kind of like, listen, there's going to be 8 or 9 times during a season or a playoff run where you go, ooh, I don't like that play. But there's also going to be 5 or 6 times where you go, whoa, we won the game because of that guy. And you can go back through the last 2 playoff runs. Against Vancouver in 2024, he had 2-game winners in a series that went 7 games. Don't win. You can keep rolling through a whole bunch of different things. Like, these last playoffs, there was no Matthias Ekholm the first 3 rounds, basically. Yeah. Evan Bouchard was a number 1, 25-minute-a-night defenseman who learned how to penalty kill on the fly and became their best penalty killing defenseman. Like, he's a superstar defenseman. And I think there is the tier with Makar and Hughes, and then there's a tier below it, and that's where Evan Bouchard. There's probably a blank tier in between, like Billy Bean and Moneyball. Like, Hughes, Makar, 50 feet of crap, every other defenseman in the NHL. Evan Bouchard's in that group, though, right below the 50 feet of crap. He's that good. And you pay that guy, and you worry about the cap things later. And I go back to a quote that Peter Chiarelli had when he drafted him, and it was, you can't acquire those players via trade, so you better draft him. And they drafted one, and he fits in perfectly, and you pay him, and you worry about the bottom of your roster later, because to go back to my last answer now, the Oilers need more difference makers. They did not lose that series against Florida. Well, there's a handful of reasons why they lost, but number 1, they didn't have enough difference makers. Evan Bouchard can be that.
All right. I got to ask about Trent Frederic then. I love the tryhards, the versatile, competitive bottom 6 guys that are just grinders. But the news of this next contract for him, 8 years, somewhere north of 3.5, probably south of $4 million. That's a lot of money. Can you kind of walk me through the value of this player and what he adds to the lineup?
I mean, he had a pretty bad high ankle sprain for his entire time in Edmonton, so I feel like we don't even know who Trent Frederic is yet in this city. But you look at the box scores from Boston, and it's like, okay, 17 goals, 18 goals, scoring more goals than he gets minutes per game, and that's always kind of an interesting metric I like to look at for bottom 6 guys. It's like, hey, he did a lot with what little time on ice he got in Boston. I just talked about how the Oilers need more difference makers, though, and I look at him and go, he's not a difference maker. He's a nice to have, but not a true driver. So why do you want to sign up for 8 years of this guy? Like, I really like the player, and there's certainly more there. But if you're going to go 8 years with a bottom 6 player who's 27 years old, there better be significant upside. And I think his ceiling is a third-line center who kills penalties and chips in a little bit of offense. Again, you need guys like that to win a Stanley Cup. Do you need him at $3.8 million for 8 years? Or is that the type of player that a really smart, forward-thinking organization says, you know what? We'll always find that guy for $1.5, $2 million on the free agent market. Let's not take the risk and tie ourselves to one bottom six guy for the next 8 years for $3.8 million or whatever the final number ends up being. Again, if he turns into a rugged, physical, middle six winger who scores you 20 goals a season, this is an amazing value. If he takes a step back and the ankle has slowed him down and he never gets that speed and he's a fourth line left winger who is kind of good on the penalty kill but only scores you 10 goals a year, you're sitting here like the Islanders were with Pierre Engvall going, why did we ever think this guy would give us 8 good years? So it's a risk, and I'll leave it at that, I guess. We don't know if it's a good or bad risk. I guess I'll come on the show in 4 years and maybe we'll have a better idea of it. But who knows? It feels unnecessary, but if it works, we're going to be applauding them. So I'll caution myself to criticize it too hard.
Feels like Miles Wood and his contract and how it's aging in Colorado at the moment.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, a little bit. I want to start what I'm about to ask here by saying I'm a huge Calvin Pickard guy. Got to know him when he was in Colorado. I think he's just one of the best guys just around the game. You have to, applaud the journeyman attitude, up and down, always stuck with it. That said, I believe it was Jeff Merrick I heard too last week refer to him as more of a ball hockey type goalie. Calvin Pickard definitely a bit unorthodox, but stepped up in big ways. Look, Stu Skinner, he's still a young guy, and you see the flashes. What was it, 4 shutouts this year in the postseason? Had the great run, but it's the consistency factor that I keep coming back to. That I think that's what some of the recent Stanley Cup champions have had, more so than goaltenders who are out there stealing games or standing on their head. It's that consistent. We don't feel like we're going to be in trouble here. What do the Oilers do going forward with Stu Skinner and even Calvin Pickard, I guess?
I think both guys will still be on the roster next year, but there's going to be someone in the middle of them or potentially someone above both of them. But the idea of trading Stu Skinner for one of the names or in a package for one of the names that's on the market, they all present big risks. You can go get John Gibson, but he's now on the wrong side of 30. He's expensive. He'll cost a lot to get. And he's injury prone. You can go get Thatcher Demko, but he's mega injury prone. Yeah. Granted, he has Vezina caliber upside, and the contract's not as bad there. You could go get Jake Allen, but he's 34 years old. He's a free agent. It wouldn't cost you anything, but who knows when his play is going to fall off a cliff? Because again, he's into his mid 30s now. Anton Forsberg, gross. Alex Lyon, just as gross. Who out there presents the slam dunk? As soon as they walk in the room, the Oilers' goaltending problems are done. There's not that guy. So I think you need to get someone in tandem with a Stu Skinner who you're not totally selling off whatever upside you still think Stu Skinner has. As a 26-year-old goalie, he's still very young by goaltending standards. The idea that he's 2 years away from entering his prime is not far-fetched. I would keep Stu Skinner. I'd find someone to ride with him. I'd cross my fingers and hope Pickard gets through waivers. And I'd sit there and go, hey, we got a higher floor backup to put next to Stu Skinner. If it's someone like Demko, it also comes with a tremendous ceiling. He would be my number one target. But there's just not someone out there. People keep saying Swayman. If Jeremy Swayman comes in here and doesn't bounce back, you just signed up to take on an albatross contract that cripples you going forward. Don't make that level of a dumb decision. Going and getting Demko and then his hip still sucks and he's out for half the year, that would be a bad decision, but it doesn't cripple you for the next 6 seasons at least.
Right. No, I like that assessment because, we were talking about Skinner last week. And again, he's got his ups and downs, but I'm with you. I think he's too young and has shown too much upside to just fully punt on. Tyler, we'll only keep you for a couple more minutes here. I know you got another show to jump to, so we got just a couple more for you. We got Tyler Yaremchuk of Daily Faceoff and Oilers Nation joining us here on Gorilla Sports Off Ice.
I want to get your thoughts on Evander Kane. Obviously, returns to health for this playoff run, but runs into some disciplinary issues and doesn't maybe have the same impact that you'd hope to have out of this player who's demonstrated otherwise. This is a roller coaster with Evander Kane entering his final year with Edmonton. Are you wanting to get off this ride with Evander Kane?
Yes. The playoffs really were everything that is the roller coaster of Evander Kane. When he's on and he's playing well, it's like you talk about difference makers. That guy is a difference maker, and he gives your lineup this swagger and this energy. He's so much fun to watch when he's on. When he's just a little bit off, it's bad penalties, poor D zone play, looks disinterested, even though it's the Stanley Cup final. Like, it's too wide of a gap. And the Oilers, with where they are cap wise, they can't afford the highs and lows anymore. They got to move on from him. And if I were to make this a sell to a team who's maybe looking at Evander Kane, what do we know about Evander? He cares about his bottom line, and he's heading into a contract year. And if this season goes well for Evander Kane, he probably gets a 4x4 somewhere. He probably gets himself another $20 million in career earnings when all said and done. If this season goes bad, he's signing a 1-year prove-it deal and has to be on his best behavior for another season. So all that to say, I think whatever team gets Evander Kane, because I don't think he's staying in Edmonton, whatever team gets Evander Kane is getting Evander Kane on his best behavior. And what we saw from him that first playoff run in Edmonton back in 2022, when he's on his best behavior, he is a special, one-of-a-kind player. I think the Oilers need to stop with the volatility. They need to use that money elsewhere. They need a different look. But I think another team would actually be like relatively smart to kind of put their hand up and be like, hey, we're not trading you anything for him, but we have the cap space. We'll take this free bullet. Yeah.
He's an interesting player. Like you said, when he's on his best behavior, definitely not one you shake a stick at. Last one here for you, Tyler. And then, we've been talking about the Florida Panthers are enjoying themselves since the Cup win. As someone who's, like you said, an Oilers backer, just what have you thought seeing all this?
I mean, the F. McDavid chants are a little bit much. Maybe the line is somewhere there. But if you win, you get to spike the ball. You get to be cocky. They're back-to-back champs. They can really. Brad Marchand putting the loser sticker on, like, do it all up, man. They won. They beat the Edmonton Oilers. They deserve to do whatever they want for this 2 weeks. I love watching people get publicly drunk, especially athletes who are really letting themselves loose. It seems like a ton of fun. I wish I was doing that after an Oilers Stanley Cup. Alas, I'm not. And I'm not going to sit here and do like the pouty, they're classless. Like, no, they won and they're drunk. I do dumber stuff when I'm drunk and I haven't won shit.
Totally. We also thought that the F. McDavid, that's probably right around the line. I don't know if that is the line, but that's at least close. Tyler Yaremchuk, Daily Faceoff, Oilers Nation. Thanks so much for parking some time. Yeah, we'll meet up again this summer and we'll get further thoughts. And then again, we'll get it on the calendar 4 years from now. We'll check in on Trent Frederic.
Yeah, I'll put it on my end too. Chat with you soon. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Tyler.
Thanks.
All right, that was Tyler Yaremchuk, Daily Faceoff, Oilers Nation. Big thanks to him for stopping by. Always love chatting with him. A lot of great insight there on just where the Oilers are at going forward right now, how they kind of took everything from that series. I guess let's just start with the McDavid stuff. Pretty confident that, hey, it's all fresh for McDavid. It's emotional. It's all that stuff, but I get that same sense. I don't think the Oilers are actually overly concerned about this. Maybe fans in small pockets might be wondering, wishing that he had said something a little bit more clear, but I don't think that he's really at crazy risk of leaving.
Yeah, I want to read the comment to people. It was, if I feel that there's a good window to win here over and over again, then signing is no problem. That is pretty innocuous. But if I feel there's a good window to win here is what I think people have really attached themselves to, because the if is big in that sentence. And that's what has people going a little bit crazy. I'm not going to lie to you. Nathan McKinnon's Game 7 post-game comments about, they were missing their best player. I don't know what happens from here.
Yeah.
We also, in our own fan base, saw that it's a difficult time to talk to a player after they've been eliminated from the playoffs, but especially Game 6 in the Stanley Cup final, back-to-back years to the Cup final and not getting that winning result. I think for that being McDavid's kind of general takeaway so immediately in the aftermath, it's not that weird to me that a player is despondent.
Yeah.
And even given that, I don't think it's that despondent. And I imagined, was it Friedman who pitched the possibility of short-term contract options? That seems more realistic than jumping to a future where Connor McDavid isn't an Edmonton Oiler.
Where he's going to play out the season and let's wait and see. Yeah.
But I do think it is important. This next season is going to be so huge for Edmonton to kind of alleviate some of these growing concerns about this now very fragile window that they are in, to prove that they have the team that can actually get this done in the Cup final, not just get there, right? They've arrived, but there's so much more to do at that destination. And Connor McDavid is a huge part of that, and he needs to believe in that too. So I think that he does, right? I don't think these comments immediately point to the fact that he doesn't believe in that, but he'll need to demonstrate that he does in this next year, especially as a captain, as a leader, and kind of leading his team in this new direction that Edmonton inevitably does need to go in. I thought his comments about the Trent Frederic contract, without trying to bait him into that, you've anchored yourself to a Darnell Nurse contract that you don't like. It just hasn't aged well.
Yep.
Why run the risk of anchoring yourself to another contract that might not age very well and limits you in what you're able to do, tinkering with the rest of the lineup that has genuine needs? So anyways, Edmonton has a lot of questions to answer next year. And honestly, like, so few of them are to be answered by just Connor McDavid alone.
Yeah.
To his point, there are so many things around McDavid that need to support him staying there as an Edmonton Oiler in the future.
And that's why I do, because, will you read the quote again from McDavid?
Yes. If I feel there's a good window to win here over and over again, then signing is no problem.
Because to Tyler's point, like, I don't think that is as much of like a threat as maybe there are some people who are out there kind of running with it. And I think everything you just said is spot on. While it also does leave Connor McDavid like the 5% wiggle room that if they start getting into all this and he's like, whoa, what are you doing handing out that size contract to this player? What are you doing, hamstringing our stuff, ourselves like this? It gives him some wiggle room where he says, oh, if I don't like what's going on, I can leave. But I don't. I think that was him making sure, he wasn't just going to come out and say, yep, I'm signing an 8-year deal. This is still a contract negotiation.
Right.
Each side has to maintain
you don't want to
a level of leverage.
Right. 1,000%. I think every player up for a contract who has every intention of staying with his team still has to sound as if the door is open to try and milk for the max value of that contract.
Yeah. I also liked a lot of what Tyler talked about with Evan Bouchard. And again, when undersized defensemen, offensive defensemen were first, starting to have their day in the NHL, I remember feeling that way with Tyson Barrie, where it's like, yeah, you don't have anyone else like this. You live with the fact that it's a little up and down on his own end. And to Tyler's point, he scored some big goals for that organization in the last few years. I do still look at, man, it'd be nice if you could get someone a little bit more steady paired with him. I guess not more steady. Mattias Ekholm's a very good defenseman, but you know what I'm saying.
It is interesting because Taves wasn't even Devon Taves in New York, right? Like, coming here sort of where he assumed his true full form, and it was beneficial to Makar, but Makar was beneficial to him as well. And I think that's maybe the difference maker of what Taves is to Makar versus Ekholm to Bouchard. I think it's kind of a one-way thing in that, I don't know, that might not be fair to say. But what I am saying is Ekholm obviously has a positive influence on Bouchard, and I think Bouchard needs a defensive defenseman like Ekholm alongside him. But I don't know that we've seen the same kind of growth from Ekholm. He's kind of stayed what he is. And so I don't know if there is a player that there can be a more symbiotic relationship between the two. The other thing too is the live with the ups and downs then drives an emphasis on rounding out the rest of your decor to paper over when some of those inevitable downs are going to happen. And that's where I think they've missed on how that back end comes together. It's like, I thought, I was surprised Klingberg could still play as a third pair option. It was intriguing, but that's where there's a greater emphasis then on what your second and third pair look like when your top pair is just not going to be as strong as other top pairs around the league, like Taves and Makar. Then you need to bolster the rest of your decor in loading up second, third pair. And that's where I think these limitations we've talked about around what they can do within cap constraints around the rest of the lineup, there needs to be an emphasis then on the back end.
Well, and to that point, again, something Tyler talked about of like, yeah, they did a decent job of like building their depth, but like you need difference makers. And to your point, like, not trying to just take this as a opportunity to be constantly sideswiping at John Klingberg. But like, okay, John Klingberg, like that should be a guy who's like a nice option for you somewhere down the depth chart. But when you're asking that guy to be a regular part of your lineup, and I know that's the, the back end, not the forward core that Tyler was talking about, but like, yeah, you want to have Florida had how many players with 20 points? Like, you want to have as many guys that you can count on contributing as possible. And it did feel like when you got Edmonton's depth, both up front and on the back end, up against Florida's, once you got to a certain point, it was just like, yeah, they're just much, much, much more effective on Florida's side than Edmonton's side, where it just did feel like you got into some areas where kind of, a ragtag group of players that decent depth on paper, they're not productive.
They were just a roll too high in the depth chart that they should have been. Like, Brett Kulak was a pleasant surprise, but he should have been the pleasant surprise on a third pairing. And they still need a real solution then for what that second pair should be. Yeah. And that's sort of where I'm at. And honestly, like, not so different from the conversations we're having around the Avs and what the back end will look like for them. We need to evaluate, the health and longevity of Josh Manson, because he obviously adds a physical impact that shouldn't be understated. But are we getting the most out of the mobile puck-moving defenseman that is Sam Girard, whose production has kind of waned a little bit? And I feel like Avs are in a much better room if you're talking Girard Manson as the second pair. Yeah. But it does point to why that's important still. You can't punt just because you have really good high-end talent on that top pair. Like, Bouchard obviously brings a lot in terms of production. Then you really need to emphasize defensive defensemen the rest of the way through. And they also need to be able to skate with the Edmonton Oilers, which is where a guy like Klingberg, I think, couldn't quite hang with what they were trying to accomplish.
I don't know, and shame on me for not knowing before I speak on it. I don't know where Edmonton's front office falls in terms of analytics. Part of the reason why I think the Avs have been able to find players that fit really well, hasn't been unanimous, but there's been a lot of players that they brought in, and Josh Manson, I think, is that one made me laugh too. And I think Josh Manson is a great example of like a player that you brought in at face value for people who weren't intimately familiar with Josh Manson's game. It was like, this is a very different player than who they normally get. Can he hang? But it was actually because of his analytic metrics that the Avs Pro Scouting was saying, yep, this guy does a lot of sneaky things in his game that are going to fit really well. I do wonder, just RE, what you were saying, how much of that the Oilers embrace, or if it's just, if it's a name that we like, get him in here. I don't know if they look at that. Do they fit in this role? Is it what we need to back up? And again, I'm saying that as an Oilers person, get in the chat here and be like, yeah, they're heavily in tune with that. I don't know. So, like I said, could be a little bit off base here, but I do wonder if that's maybe something that, like you said, the way they like to play, do they get players that are typecast to that effectively?
Well, I'll at least reinforce on the forward side, that's exactly the appeal of Trent Frederic, right? Like, it's kind of the body of work prior to this season that is what appeals to Edmonton about what he can be and what that ceiling might be. And they're probably hoping that there's more growth potential for him. So my hope would be that they would do the same then with the back end. But I think that they anchored themselves too much to the forward depth side of things. And I don't mean, at the top of the lineup is where this was too heavily invested in. I mean, like the Adam Henrique sweepstakes going back a couple trade deadlines, and then the Jeff Skinner chance that they took on him, that really rounded out their forward depth, but it didn't quite, answer really any scoring problems at the end of the day. And there are injuries at play, right? Like, not having Zach Hyman definitely affects the bottom line of the depth matchup that Tyler was referring to with the third line by third line is really where both these teams were kind of exposed. So I don't blame Edmonton for having that priority then around the forward depth, but it's definitely come at the expense of some other areas of the lineup that I think require priority going into next year. Because to Tyler's point, again, not to devalue Trent Frederic specifically, but I do think that there are guys that can round out your bottom six a little more affordably. And so you don't need to get in on whatever equivalent of the Adam Henrique, trade deadline sweepstakes and the Jeff Skinner contract, like even Evander Kane and like technically Corey Perry, but he played above expectation once Hyman was out, so I'll give him a pass. That's where you don't need to be throwing out the bigger contracts, though. Prioritize the back end.
Well, and then let's talk about the net. I really do. I actually texted Chloe because her and I had just that morning of Game 6, we were in the office, and her and I were talking. What?
We're hosting the Rookie Showcase.
What?
Colorado to host the 2025 Rookie Showcase at South Suburban Sports Complex.
Yes! 5 minutes from my house. Yes!
I was just thinking about this because we're going to be content planning for Dev Camp, which is rolling right after the draft this weekend. And I was like, well, I want to sit down with Brian Wilsey, okay? They don't let him talk to us that much. I want to talk to this man. Should I try to do it now? Or will I get a chance at Rookie Showcase, but I don't know where it's going to be? Will I get to travel?
Yes.
I will get to talk to Brian Wilsey in my own backyard, and I'm super hype.
I'm going to use this as I want to get back into the Oilers goaltending.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'm going to use this as an opportunity, but I don't know if I'm breaking any news here. Any of that. I'm just passing along what I was told. This event being at South Suburban, the new South Suburban Sports Complex, I heard at one point last season, and I reached out to a couple other people to see if there was any other people who could give me any level of confirmation on this. And I got kind of the same response from everyone. Maybe that's what I've heard, but we'll see. There's a chance the Avs will be moving to South Suburban Sports Complex, new facility for their practice facility, while the construction under downtown phase 1 of that new project does start to roll out, I believe at some point in the next year. But I do wonder if this is maybe the first sign that we're going to get here, Megan, that the Avs will be using the new South Suburban Sports Complex as their new practice home. Practice home? Sure. The Avs will be playing in the Rookie Showcase, Rookie Faceoff, Friday, September 12th against the Utah Hockey Club, Saturday, September 13th versus the Vegas Golden Knights, and then Sunday, September 14th, also versus the Vegas Golden Knights. Interesting. So 3 games as part of that Rookie Showcase, but wow, what a fun weekend. I've been lucky enough to have been to several of those Rookie Showcases. I know you've been to multiple as well. They're a ton of fun. They're fun hockey to watch. It's guys who really care. There's a lot of scouts in town. There's a lot of hockey personnel. Really fun weekend. Tickets will be made available to the public in August. You can go to coloradoavalanche.com/Avs alert, and they'll give you some updates. There's a free plug for them to get some tickets sold. Awesome. Great news to break here on the show.
Yeah, love it.
Edmonton's goaltending. I had texted Chloe after the, I believe it was the second Sam Bennett goal, where it was the rebound that Stu Skinner gave up. That was like, what are you doing? And I told Chloe, I said, that's a bad enough goal against that might get you traded. I like Tyler's suggestion. Bring in someone who can maybe even play ahead of Stuart Skinner. Bring in a 1A. Keep Stuart Skinner. Don't fully pull the ripcord on it, but bolster that. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with the concern around the names being floated out there, right? John Gibson, older goaltender, still a great goaltender who can hang in this league, but if that return is Brand Nugent Hopkins, which was the name I just saw being floated out there, not only then are you losing some of your critical top 6 picture, but you're doing so for an aging goaltender that still, like, I'm not sure that really resolves the issue in net. In the same way that I wasn't crazy about Gibson being the solution for Colorado for similar reasons. It's like, I think you buy a year of an answer in net before you're asking the same question again. And so I do think if you're going to resolve this issue, take the route of the Colorado Avalanche, save yourself some time and some heartache and some draft capital probably, and just do it once and for all. So go with a goaltender who's a bit younger, a bit more upside, and has the upside though that isn't such a risk that he could assume a 1A 1B position. Goaltenders aren't human. I don't know if I've established that.
Now here's the one thing that I will say, and I didn't want to ask Tyler, and you know, I'm sure people who cover the Oilers are sick of talking about it, but like, there's been twice that I know of that the Avs and the Oilers have been after the same goalie, and the Avs have won out both times. One was Darcy Kemper, and we know how that went for the Avs. The other, I've been told, was Mackenzie Blackwood. That the Oilers, this was a goaltender that the Oilers were sniffing around. To your point, aren't you tired of having to be part of these goaltender sweepstakes every year? Don't you just want to go get someone and just be done with it? I like Tyler's suggestion of Thatcher Demko. Here's an injury-prone guy, but like here's a guy who raises your floor a little bit. And your worst cases, you have to deal with the tandem that you had this year. But can you get someone who not only raises your floor, but gives you a higher ceiling?
Yeah.
I'm with you on the...
I just really wish Thatcher Demko could stay healthy. It actually makes me so sad to have that reaction because he is such a good goaltender. But that's the other reason, too. I think there's incentive for Vancouver to be considering this, too, is they kind of need to answer their own goaltending questions with... I think Sheloffs is a really good young goaltender, but I don't think they're comfortable enough to like move on from Demko and just elevate Sheloffs just yet. So I don't know. I think they're in a weird room. San Jose.
That's Olympian Archer Sheloffs to you, Megan.
I don't want to hear about this goalie. All right, I just brought him up voluntarily, but I don't want to hear about him anymore. No, but I think Vancouver moving on from Demko makes a lot of sense for Vancouver. I think they need a more solid solution to back up than the injury-prone goaltender, which stinks then. And so maybe it is a safer bet where there's at least a Stu Skinner alongside an injury-prone Thatcher Demko, like that can kind of weather some of those moments where maybe he's absent, rehabilitating an injury.
Well, and you know, as not a goalie myself, but I know a lot of goalies, and I try to understand that position as best I can. I don't know, that also is hey, Stuart Skinner, you're not the only guy. You're not the guy. You've got to earn your starts. And you do just wonder, can that push a team or a player? Hey, my minutes are suddenly in jeopardy here. I got to perform well enough to even get a start. Might be good for him.
It made Alexander Georgiev in year one, I think, contributed to the results that he had because of a Pavel Francouz right behind him, who was a very qualified goaltender in his own right. So I could see it bringing out the best of many goaltenders, having that kind of competition behind you.
Honestly, a Pavel Francouz type is exactly what I'm picturing right now for Edmonton.
If he could still be healthy and playing, that would have been a perfect solution for them.
100%.
Or like a Scott Wedgwood type. Yeah. Oh, wait, the Avs got him too.
Hey, you just mentioned Alexander Georgiev's out there. He's a free agent. They can just pick him right up.
I don't know. You know,
I was trying to tee up Megan to say something mean, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it.
I won't do it.
What are the thoughts you have on the Oilers?
That's it. Let's talk about Trevor Zegras.
Yeah. We are going to talk about that a little bit, but Oilers are definitely going to be one of the most, for me, interesting, intriguing teams this summer. Because you have been to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row. Isn't this funny? And this, we can move on after this, but like they've been to the Stanley Cup final 2 years in a row. Stuart Skinner, for all intents and purposes, starting goaltender, take his team to the Cup final 2 years in a row.
Totally.
I did also find it funny, you know, what Tyler was talking about of like the city of Edmonton and the Oilers have done a lot to appeal to Connor McDavid. And like, you know, it would be crazy to see him move on for those same, you know, for those reasons. But like for everything that the Oilers seemingly have going for them, 2 years in a row, Western Conference champs, it just doesn't feel great around them.
No, beyond every one of us projecting our thoughts onto McDavid's comments, it still feels bad, right? Like they still couldn't hang with the Florida Panthers, and that will need to be addressed.
Well, and it was and like I said, this is a very niche argument that it's different teams with different players and different coaches and all that stuff. So it's not super fair, but 4 years in a row, the Edmonton Oilers have lost to the eventual Stanley Cup champion. And with the exception of them having to come back from down 3-0 against the Florida Panthers, none of those series have felt particularly close. So they're getting there, but there does seem, in my opinion, there does feel like still a gap between the Edmonton Oilers and the teams that are winning Stanley Cups. I'm going to be really curious to see where they go this summer. When you have Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, you're always in the fight.
Yeah, just it makes me salty about the way the West shook out, and just some of the earlier teams eliminated because it was such a bloodbath to get out of rounds 1 and 2, that come the Western Conference Final, it just felt like, I don't know if any...
Who can score the most?
Yeah, I don't know if any of these can hang with this version of the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, you started saying that from the second round. Let's talk about, we'll end with our initial kind of lead up to the draft. And again, we don't have, I was going to say a ton. We don't really have any Avs draft preview coverage for this year because the Avs are barely participating in the draft this year. So we'll talk a little bit about it in the lead up this week. But Megan, there was some NHL news, and it was a player who I'm not going to say we had on our board for keep an eye out. The Avs might be bringing this guy in, but it was a guy that we had on our board of, hey, there were rumors flying around. The Avs were maybe interested in this player last year. If the Avs are looking to really shake things up, this could be a name. He ends up going for really a much lesser value than I think some people were expecting. You've had the girl standing across the street from the burning building grin on your face all day. Trevor Zegras sent out east to the Philadelphia Flyers, reunited with friend Jamie Drysdale in exchange for a second-round pick, a fourth-round pick, and Ryan Poehling? I never feel confident pronouncing that last name.
Poehling.
A player who I do think will actually fit pretty nice with the Anaheim Ducks.
That's a great return, right? Like you get some center depth replenished, maybe more of a third line capacity, but really versatile and competitive player to plug in the bottom of the lineup there. I think makes a lot of sense. Yeah. It's part of the return.
No real complaints. I do think the idea of Trevor Zegras is worth more than a second and a fourth. But I think the reality of Trevor Zegras the last 2 seasons, this feels like a pretty appropriate return.
I mean, that's a second and a fourth and a roster player. So I don't know. I think that's weighted pretty well. I mean, there's obviously concerns as to why it didn't work out in Anaheim, right? Like this was a player with high draft pedigree that was expected to be more of a core player, a franchise turning player for Anaheim, and it just didn't quite pan out for reasons. And, I suspect it's kind of attitudinal reasons. I shared this with you earlier, though. This is a sport where almost every player who makes it to the NHL level is told that they are the best at every level. And then they get to the NHL and they're no longer the very best, but they've been told their whole life just how good they are. And there's a lot of humbling that needs to happen to really have success at the NHL level, despite being very good and being told you're good your whole life. And so I want to make something clear about Trevor Zegras. I find him very fun. I find him very fun to watch. But if hockey players were apps, Sidney Crosby would be LinkedIn. I think Nathan McKinnon would be like Reddit. It is definitely a little concerning at times, but lots of useful information. Cale Makar would be Google. Very useful. Trevor Zegras is TikTok. All right. He's super fun. He's super fun to watch. But you have to be discerning and ask yourself, what am I looking at? Yeah. Periodically, you have to ask yourself. Is this bad for my brain? Right. Is this bad for my brain? You have to ask yourself. And so I love TikTok. Okay. I love watching TikTok. I don't want TikTok on the Colorado Avalanche.
I don't want my life to revolve around TikTok. Not only because I so wholeheartedly agree, and I don't even think it's exclusive to hockey, but like pro athletes from all sports were the best player on their team for the vast majority of their life. I do find it funny every now and then you'll see these pictures of like, oh, the Toronto Marl Bros 8 and under team featured Steven Stamkos, John Tavares, PK Subban. It's like, okay, all right, maybe you weren't always the best player on your team. But I so wholeheartedly agree with that of like, these are athletes who have been exclusively lifted up and made exceptions for and put on a pedestal and told you're our best player and get out there. And that's especially true, I think, of a player like Zegras, whose skill set shines in game action at pretty much every level leading up to the NHL, where the hands and the skill and the moves and hockey in a phone booth,
right?
The Michigans,
all of creative.
All of that stuff is just fodder for young coaches coming through the ranks. Oh my gosh, Trevor! Oh, we just give the puck to Trevor. Just get out there. We're down by 1. Give the puck to Trevor. And then you get to the NHL and it's like, guess what? Everybody's really good. Everybody's fast. Everybody has hands. Every defenseman can stand you up. And I think there's an adjustment period there. And I think you've got to have the right stuff between the ears to be able to make a change like that. And I think when you watch his first full season, it was really exciting. Here's a player who's going to be able to his game's going to be able to translate. Trevor Zegras feels to me like the league saw it, was in awe of it, learned it, understood it, and now it's not really much of a threat.
I think he has to build other parts into his game because I think the high skill still shines through in moments. He's an incredibly creative playmaker and his puck skill is off the charts. But you're right. The NHL is a little more wise to it now. And I think, today's defensemen are evolving to better anticipate this type of player. And so you have to round out your game and find other ways to make an impact. And you have to be willing to do that, open up the game and, step aside from how you've always played it, because how he's always played it has brought him success. But There has to be more. I talk about players being more dimensional. That's all it is for Trevor Zegras. But I say that as if it's a simple thing.
Mm-hmm.
You talk about stuff between the ears. You have to be really bought into that. And it can be a humbling experience, I'm sure.
Well, and part of the reason why I thought he would have been an interesting fit next to Nathan McKinnon was, all right, you're going to be, you could play on a line with someone that all the attention's off of you. Trevor Zegras kind of becomes an afterthought if you're skating with Nathan McKinnon. And I think part of what I'm going to be interested in this fit in Philly is, one, do they put him next to Matvei Michkov? And two, can that have a similar effect? Now, I don't know. That might be two players that are a little bit too young, still have a lot of parts of their game to be developed, to be putting them together. But I don't know, power plays, late in games, you need offense, ozone starts. Could putting those two players together take some of the attention off a guy like Trevor Zegras, where it is going to free him up to be a little bit more creative and great playmaker as well, slipping passes through seams and, beating guys one-on-one. Is that going to maybe make it a little bit easier for him? We'll see. But I the more this trade sits with me, the more I think it makes perfect sense, especially when you consider a player that Trevor Zegras was outspoken about being upset about having lost in Anaheim and what he called his very best friend. They peed together and slept together was what he said. Jamie Drysdale in Philly. I think there's a lot of this that makes sense.
Yeah, I think now under Tocchet, this is definitely a necessary coaching change to work with a player like Zegras, and not so different from a player like Michkov, who also I think is unchained with a different direction in coaching. And so I think players like Michkov and Zegras can really anticipate each other and feed off of the other pretty well. But there is going to need to be the adult, right? Like in the same way that Celebrini and Smith have Toffoli, they're going to need their version of Toffoli to help sort of ground them and get them acclimated to this league, which feels weird because Zegras has been around this league for a while. So that's where the having the egoless approach to this really will help him to have success in Philadelphia, because I think that their forward picture is starting to come together. Like, they signed Noah Cates to an extension. I talked a lot about this player around the deadline. And so I think they've gotten better with the addition of Zegras, but they are going to still need the adult in the room to help kind of settle that down and channel it into something productive.
Yeah, we'll talk.
We'll talk on our Philadelphia Flyers podcast, right? Today's the Edmonton Oilers show. We'll have our Flyers cast coming soon.
No, I was gonna say we'll talk about the Flyers and where they're kind of at, because they're another team.
They are desperate for goaltending.
And then I do also want to revisit something that you talked about before the show of, like, there's starting to be some type of symbiotic relationship between the Ducks and the Flyers. That's maybe just something to keep an eye on. As you just mentioned, the Flyers are desperate for goaltending. These have suddenly become two teams that have dealt a lot with each other, in the same way that the Avs are suddenly starting to build this, relationship with the Sharks. And it's a very well documented relationship with the Blue Jackets. And it is funny just when you start to notice these little pockets of teams that like to work together. It works.
A list of besties in the league, right? Mike Greer, Chris McFarland, definitely besties.
And and I think this is something that we should keep an eye on as we head into the end of the week and the draft. Of, again, are these lines to keep the string connected between? That
is super interesting. I don't want to now start spoiling it, but I do think that San Jose has draft capital, and there are potentially maybe more depthy pieces, B grade, C grade prospects that could be of interest to San Jose. I don't know. Maybe they're not thrilled with how Nikolai Kovalenko went. I think they missed, though, on how they utilized Kovalenko, just to be honest.
He seemed like he started working really well with Celebrini, and then they changed things up. I know there was some injury stuff in there, too. But
I think there was a disconnect between coaching and Kobe.
Does Miles Wood not seem like just
the perfect San Jose Shark?
Honestly, he seems like someone who would immediately be on that Tyler Toffoli, Macklin Celebrini, Will Smith little inner circle.
He can skate with them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he plays with them, if that's where you were going with this. But
not necessarily, but
I don't hate it. That they might need an actual adult in that room, though.
So true. But like you said, for the Sharks, 2 first-round picks, 2 second-round picks, a third, 2 fourths, a fifth, and a seventh. You can peel off one of those fourths. Or the third. Do you need a third? Why don't you...
You don't need a third.
Take Miles Wood and the fourth that the Avs have and just give them a third. That way, the Avs get to move up, but you and I don't have to keep track of any additional draft picks.
Perfect.
I love it.
Chris?
Let's talk about the draft really fast as we wind today's show down. Megan, it is a fourth. You know what? I was about to say it with a ton of confidence. 4th and a 7th?
Yeah.
Okay. Why? For some reason.
So I also meant to look this up, but 4th and a 7th is what I've had in my brain this whole time.
So, because someone said to me last week, some of them 4th and a 6th. It is a 4th and a 7th. That person got in my head and they messed up the cadence of what I was saying there. It is a 4th and a 7th for the Avs this year. This is a room that they've been in several times since winning the Stanley Cup, of not having a lot of draft capital. What approach do you think they take heading into round 1 on Friday? I don't see many worlds where the Avs end up back in the first round.
Right.
But do you think the Avs add any draft capital here? Do they get rid of the remaining picks they have? How do you see this weekend, broad strokes, playing out for the Avs?
I think they've had some luck with some of their later drafts and later round drafts. So maybe keep the 7th, maybe trade the 4th to turn that into 2 additional later round picks, something like that. I'd like to see them get a little more fun with it, though, and involve like a real roster player in some
Mhm.
capacity, kind of like what you were just teasing with San Jose, which obviously would see a player like Wood going out, but that would open up so much cap space to start then filling in some bottom six needs that definitely still need to be addressed. Obviously, the Taves sweepstake has ended, but the need for bottom six help has not.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's going to be something I think they can address with the draft this weekend.
Yeah, that's kind of what I see as well. I like what you just laid out about, like, okay, do you do something with that fourth to acquire some more capital? Yeah, can you flip the fourth for a fifth and a sixth, then attach that sixth to Miles Wood to get a third, and can you do some stuff like that? Yeah, just to here's what I'm pretty confident in. Wherever those picks sit right now, I don't know exactly which number the fourth and the seventh are. I do not think the Avs will be making those exact picks.
Yeah.
I think the Avs will make at least 2 selections this weekend, but I don't think they'll be the 2 selections they currently hold right now.
I like that.
I don't know if it's going to be better picks, worse picks, whatever, but I don't think the Avs will select in the 2 positions that they're slated to select in right now.
Yeah. No, I believe that too. I don't think they're just going to stand pat.
Yeah, I think, look, you kind of have to get a little frisky. You got to
Chris
make.
likes to too,
Mhm.
even if it feels like it's now just an earlier 7th round pick than the
Right,
one
right.
it was going to be, right? Like I think it'll be something.
It's something. They like to do. You're totally right. They like to do that.
You know what I want? I want them to hire an assistant coach.
Ooh, okay.
I want to see some personnel announcements come alongside this draft, right? Like, this is the time of year they're all getting together, all the great minds behind the curtain here. They need to make some hires. All right.
Mhm.
Doesn't have to be the assistant for the NHL bench, but they need now a head coach and an assistant in Loveland as well. I just want to see some personnel announcements come this weekend.
Okay, I like that. And hey, especially with the youngsters getting on the ice next week, no better time than to get some of those hires filled out.
Yeah. But if you need a coach, just give me a call. I will go to development camp and help out.
Can you, off the very absolute top of your head, as I wind this show down, I'm fully putting you on the spot. This was not at all part of my plan. You said the Jonathan Toews sweepstakes are done. The need for help in the bottom part of your lineup isn't. Do you have anyone that comes to your brain of like, that would be a fun player? I don't, and I'm going through the list. So if you don't, that's fine.
I don't, but give me 24 hours and I will have a name for you.
And we'll be back at it tomorrow. Yeah.
Because I do feel like I've been such a hater, right? No to Taves, no to Zegras. And so I want to come to you guys with solutions, okay? That's only fair. I can't be just saying no to everything.
Nico Sturm. I don't hate it, but that was also just partially a joke. That's going to do it. I don't have much else.
Olympian.
That's right.
Nico Sturm.
That's right. Olympian Nico Sturm. 2-time Stanley Cup champion Nico Sturm.
Show some respect.
Bama Metcalf throws Corey Perry's name out there.
I know I've gotten really prickly around Corey Perry.
If you want to get back to the Cup finals, but I can't guarantee.
Yeah, if you want to win.
Yeah. Oh, no. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. We got Chloe behind the glass today, kicking off the week for us. Like I said, just a couple. Tomorrow will be a draft edition of Guerrilla Sports Off Ice. Looking forward to that. We've got our planning meeting after this for dev camp and all that good stuff. So lots of fun content coming your way. She's Megan. I'm Jesse. Chloe behind the glass. Thanks so much for hanging out. Have a great week. We'll see you guys tomorrow. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.
Bye.